Hi everyone, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit today about some advanced techniques for your resistance training workouts. So the idea is when we resistance train, we're looking to progressively overload the muscles on a regular basis to stimulate muscle hypertrophy and strength gains. So you can get away with doing that with just normal straight sets, working to that failure point with adequate rest in between, progressively increasing the reps or weight lifted as time progresses. But some advanced training techniques can really help to ramp up the intensity of those workouts over time. Ultimately, you're looking to go to muscular failure, so that basically recruits the maximum number of muscle fibers possible, and that's where you really get that kind of response in terms of hypertrophy. So you've got two types of muscle fibers. Type 1, which is a little bit more endurance-based, aerobic type fibers. Generally use those more for things like running and long-distance cardio. You've then got type 2, which are much more explosive, fast-twitch fibers. Those are the ones you tend to use most when you resistance train, particularly when using loads of sort of 60% and above 1 rep max. Those are the ones that respond generally better as well to hypertrophy. So you're really looking to stimulate those as much as possible and recruit them maximally. Okay, so I'd only advise doing some of these once you've been training for a little bit of time. They're not really suitable for absolute beginners because generally you get adequate response from, as I said before, just straight sets with rest periods in between. If you've been training for, kind of 3 to 6 months at least, then you might look to incorporate some of these. Bearing in mind though, these are all quite fatiguing, a lot of stress on the muscular system as well as the central nervous system. So you certainly wouldn't want to incorporate all of them at all times. You need to kind of pick them carefully, just select them and listen to your body. Adequate recovery is absolutely critical as well. So you need to just manage that recovery as well as that intensity. Okay, so let me take you through a few now. So first one is a drop set. Okay, so typically you'd use this on, say, the last set of each exercise. So say, for example, if you're doing 4 sets of 12 reps on a dumbbell chest press, the 4th set, you might want to incorporate a drop set. So that would basically involve using a weight that you can lift 12 reps of with good form, almost going to that point of failure. You then put those down and then you'd immediately pick up some lighter dumbbells and you'd go again. Okay, so a general rule of thumb is aiming for maybe a 50% decrease in the weight. So say, for example, if you're using, say, 20 kilogram dumbbells and you complete 12 good reps, go to failure, put those down, pick up the 10s, go for another set straight away. Go to failure, put those down, pick up the 5s, go for another set to failure. Okay, so what you're going to do there is build up that metabolic stress, that accumulation of blood, and you're going to get a lot more kind of muscle fiber damage because ultimately you're recruiting type 1 and type 2 fibers because you've got that little bit more endurance, that slightly longer time of retention, and it's just a way to build up that metabolic stress as well as that mechanical tension. Okay, so that's the first technique. Try that at the end of the last set of each exercise that you do. A superset, now there's 3 different types. A superset basically involves doing 2 exercises back to back with minimal rest. Okay, so for example, you can do what's called agonist-antagonist superset, which is effectively working opposite muscle groups. Okay, so for example, a great option is to do a bicep exercise straight into a tricep exercise. Okay, so you might want to do, a standing bicep curl straight into a cable push down on the cable machine for triceps. All right, so you maybe do 8, 10, 12 reps of bicep curls straight into triceps, opposite movements, opposite muscle actions. Then you give yourself a rest period and then you repeat. Okay, so great way to ramp up the intensity again. It's quite good for time efficiency as well because you're hitting your muscle groups in a shorter amount of time. So if you've got less time in the gym and you just want to get through those workouts and sets, then it's quite good to superset opposite muscle groups. Quite taxing again though, particularly if you do bigger muscle groups. Say for example like a chest and a back supersets. You could do, for example, again a dumbbell chest press straight into a bent over row, or you could do an overhead shoulder press and then straight into a pull-up or a lat pull down. Again, vertical pressing, vertical pulling, or horizontal pressing, horizontal pulling. Alright, so you're hitting big major muscle groups back to back, quite cardiovascular as well, a little bit more systemic fatigue because you're hitting 2 big compound exercises in a row. Actually really good for if you're in a fat loss phase because it's quite compound, it's big movements rather than doing hundreds of little isolation exercises. Okay? Pre-exhaust, that involves doing 2 exercises on the same muscle group, but you've got to consider your exercises are either isolation exercises or compound exercises. Isolation, for example, let's talk about triceps. An isolation exercise will be, again, something like a cable push down, lying tricep extensions. That's where you're literally just working that tricep, but you're not really doing any chest or shoulder work. It's all isolating, okay? Your compound exercises are things like, for example, a narrow grip bench press. So you're using your triceps, but also that chest is working as well. So that's big muscle groups stepping in. Dips, for example, a tricep dip would be a compound exercise because you're using more than one joint, more than one muscle group. Pre-exhaust would involve doing the isolation exercise first. So you're pre-exhausting that muscle, okay? So you're doing, for example, again, 12 or 15 reps of tricep extensions, then you're going straight into a set of dips, or straight into a set of narrow grip bench press. Again, those bigger muscles can help out at the end when that muscle's already fatigued, and then that can take you past that point of failure, and you're building up a lot more, again, stimulus and metabolic stress on that muscle, because you're doing 2 exercises back to back on the same area. So again, really intense, really good to ramp up that area. If you've got a lagging body part, it's quite good to do that as a way to kind of bust through a plateau. We've got post-exhaust, which is effectively the opposite. So you're doing your compound exercise first, then your isolation. Okay, so for example, narrow grip bench press straight into tricep extensions, or dips straight into tricep extensions. So effectively the same, but just working the opposite way around. Okay, I'll let you decide which one's harder. Rest pause is a little bit more max strength to go into absolute failure and beyond. So for example, if you're doing sort of more maximal strength training like sets of 4 to 6 reps, you would do, for example, something like a deadlift or a chest press. You go to failure on that rep number 6. You then give yourself between 10 and 15 seconds recovery, a few deep breaths, and then you go for another 1 to 2 reps. You do the same again, 15-second rest, squeeze out another rep, 15-second rest, squeeze out another rep. So effectively what that allows you to do is take your 6-rep max and turn it into a 10 or a 12-rep max, because every rep you're going to fatigue, you're recruiting maximal muscle fibers again with a much higher load. So you get a lot more volume with that high mechanical tension, because you're using a heavy weight, but you're gaining more reps, so more total volume, really good for strength gains. Forced reps are basically spotting. So say for example, if you're on a bench press, you may want to go for a set of 10, you can't physically do any more. If you've got a spotter, you can push to 12 because they're there to give you that little bit of assistance on the way up. So again, you're taking those muscles past that point of failure and you just work into fatigue. You'll get much more response from that again. And the last one are negatives, which basically involves maximising that eccentric phase. So the lowering of the weight is actually where you're the strongest. So if you control that weight down as much as possible, and then you've got someone that can lift it up for you, then you can actually manage more weight. So generally you can lift sort of 20% greater load by just doing negative reps than doing full concentric and eccentric phases. So that's a way to build up your maximum strength, create maximal muscle damage with the lowering phase of that movement, and then your partner can help you on the way up. Okay? So that's a good summary there of some advanced training techniques. So give those a go in the gym next time you're in, and then let us know if you've got any questions.